The first shot wasn't fired until 9:17 that night. By then, everyone in the room already knew someone was lying. The applause inside the Denver Museum of Industry echoed beneath a glass ceiling as cameras flashed around 72-year-old Jack Mercer. After 48 years as one of Colorado's most respected bridge engineers, he was accepting a Lifetime Achievement Award. Governors had congratulated him. Newspapers called him the man who connected cities. Jack hated every second of it. He smiled for the cameras because that was expected. He shook hands because that was polite. But every few seconds, his eyes drifted toward the rear exit, where a security guard quietly spoke into an earpiece. Someone hadn't arrived. Someone Jack had invited personally. When the museum director finished the introduction, she gestured toward the front row. Mr. Mercer asked for one seat to remain open tonight. The spotlight found the empty chair. A brass plaque on its back simply read, "For Emily." No last name, no explanation. The audience exchanged curious glances. The director leaned toward Jack. "We can begin whenever you're ready." Jack adjusted the microphone. "If she's coming." He glanced at the empty chair. "She'll find us." The speech was supposed to celebrate bridges. Instead, Jack spoke about regret. "You spend enough years building things," he said, "and eventually you realize the hardest things to repair aren't made of steel." The room fell silent. "I've built structures people will drive across for 100 years. He smiled sadly. "I couldn't build one strong enough to reach my own daughter." No one applauded. Not because they weren't moved, because it felt too personal. Then Jack reached into his suit pocket and removed a small, weathered envelope. "I brought something tonight." He held it up. "I've carried this for 27 years. Reporters leaned forward. "My daughter has never seen it." The museum director looked confused. She hadn't known about this part. Jack smiled faintly. "If Emily walks through those doors before I finish, I'll finally open it." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Somewhere outside the museum, tires screeched. Nobody inside noticed. Across downtown Denver, investigative podcaster Maya Brooks sat in traffic, pounding her steering wheel. "Come on." She glanced at the dashboard clock. She'd been invited to cover the ceremony after producing a documentary series about forgotten American infrastructure projects. Jack Mercer had agreed to his first interview in over a decade. Now she was going to miss it because an SUV had jackknifed across an intersection. Her producer called. "You almost there?" 5 minutes. They're already live. I know." She hung up and grabbed her camera bag. The museum was only 4 blocks away. She started running. Inside the museum ballroom, Jack reached the final page of his speech. Still no Emily. He folded the paper. I guess tonight wasn't the night. The audience slowly rose for a standing ovation. Then every light in the building went out. Darkness swallowed the room. Someone screamed. Emergency lights flickered on in deep red. The fire alarm didn't sound. The security system did. Metal doors slammed shut throughout the museum. A recorded voice echoed overhead. Security lockdown initiated. People looked around in confusion. Then came a loud crash from the Hall of Innovation. Glass shattered. Security guards sprinted toward the noise. Jack didn't move. His expression changed from confusion to recognition, almost as if he'd been expecting something. Maya reached the museum entrance just as police cruisers blocked the street. Guests poured onto the sidewalk through emergency exits, some crying, some filming with their phones. She pushed toward a museum employee. "What happened?" "I don't know. Was anybody hurt?" The employee pointed toward the building. "They stole something." "What?" He swallowed. "They didn't take anything," Maya frowned. "Then what happened?" The employee looked genuinely shaken. "They left something." 20 minutes later, bomb technicians cleared the building. Inside the Hall of Innovation, one display case had been smashed. The artifact that had been inside, a scale model of the original Silver Canyon Bridge, still sat untouched. Instead, resting on the pedestal was a plain wooden box. No fingerprints, no address, only 5 words burned into the lid. Jack Mercer, Cam Els Th He True H. Every camera in the museum had gone offline exactly 90 seconds before the blackout. There was no footage of whoever entered, or whoever left. Detective Elena Ruiz arrived before midnight. She'd spent 15 years investigating organized crime before transferring to major crimes. She wasn't impressed by theatrics. She opened the wooden box carefully. Inside sat a pocket watch. Its glass was cracked. Its hands had stopped forever at 7:42. Beneath it lay a yellowed newspaper clipping. One headline. One photograph. A bridge collapse. 6 deaths. Dated. 30 years earlier. Jack looked at the clipping as though he'd seen a ghost. Ruiz noticed immediately. "You recognize this?" Jack answered without looking up. "I wish I didn't." She picked up the watch. "Whose was it?" Jack closed his eyes. "The only man who knew why that bridge really fell." Ruiz frowned. "The article says he died in the collapse." Jack looked directly at her. "That's what everyone believed." The detective studied his face. He wasn't surprised. He was afraid. For the first time that night, not of what had happened, but of what might happen next. And somewhere across the city, a woman who hadn't spoken to her father in 11 years watched the breaking news on television. When the camera showed the wooden box, she dropped the coffee mug in her hand because she recognized the pocket watch instantly. It had been sitting in her apartment just 3 days earlier. Emily Mercer hadn't planned on seeing her father's face again, not on television, not in person, not ever. But there he was, surrounded by flashing police lights, staring at a pocket watch that should have been sitting inside the top drawer of her apartment desk. She muted the TV. Her breathing became shallow. 3 days earlier, she'd opened that drawer while searching for old tax documents. The watch had been inside a small velvet pouch with no note, no return address, nothing to explain who had left it there. She'd assumed it belonged to her late mother. Now the news was showing what appeared to be the exact same watch. That was impossible. She hurried to the bedroom. The drawer slid open. The velvet pouch was still there. Her hands trembled as she untied the string. Empty. Someone had taken it. But no lock had been broken. Nothing else in the apartment was missing. Whoever entered had come for only one thing. Back at the museum, Detective Elena Ruiz ignored the reporters gathering outside. Something about Jack Mercer bothered her. Not because he seemed guilty, because he looked like someone waiting for a nightmare he'd spent decades trying to outrun. She placed the pocket watch inside an evidence bag. "You said the owner died," Jack nodded. "Everyone believed he did, but you don't." "No. Why?" Jack looked through the museum's shattered glass ceiling toward the night sky. "Because I watched him walk away." Ruiz didn't respond immediately. "You watched a dead man leave a bridge collapse?" Jack finally met her eyes. "I watched a man disappear." The museum's security director interrupted. "Detective, what is it? We found something." He led her into the control room. Every security camera had gone black for exactly 91 seconds. Except one. A maintenance camera overlooking an employee hallway had continued recording because it operated on a separate backup system. The image wasn't clear, just grainy black and white footage. A single person walked calmly through the hallway during the blackout. Not running, not hiding, wearing a dark maintenance uniform and baseball cap. Their face stayed hidden until they reached the exit. Just before opening the door, the figure looked directly toward the camera, only for a second, long enough for Ruiz to notice something strange. The person's left eye appeared completely different from the right. Not injured. Artificial. A glass eye. Maya Brooks finally entered the museum after police allowed media access. Most reporters chased dramatic footage. She didn't. Instead, she wandered through the empty exhibit halls. Years of investigative journalism had taught her one lesson. People looked where the noise was. The truth usually waited somewhere quieter. She found it near the engineering exhibit. An elderly volunteer sat alone on a bench, still shaken. "You okay?" He nodded absent-mindedly. "I've worked here 12 years. You see anything unusual tonight?" He thought for a moment. "Not during the blackout." "What about before?" He hesitated. There was a man asking strange questions. What kind of questions? He didn't care about Jack. He cared about an old bridge model. Asked whether anyone had ever opened it. Maya frowned. "The display model?" "Yes." He seemed disappointed when I said no. Meanwhile, Emily drove across Denver toward the museum. She wasn't going there to reconcile with her father. She wanted answers. The empty velvet pouch sat on the passenger seat beside her. Every red light felt unbearable. Who had entered her apartment? How had they known about the watch? And why leave no trace? Her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost ignored it. Instead, she answered. No one spoke, only breathing. Then a calm male voice. Don't let your father open the envelope. The line went dead. Jack hadn't thought about the envelope in years. It still rested inside his jacket pocket, yellowed with age. Its seal remained unbroken. Ruiz noticed him touching it. What's inside? I honestly don't know anymore. You never opened it? No. Why carry it for 27 years? Jack smiled without humor. Because I promised someone I wouldn't open it unless Emily was standing beside me. Ruiz studied him carefully. You've kept a promise for 27 years? I've broken enough others. Across town, Maya visited the Denver Public Library's archival department. She requested every article related to the Silver Canyon Bridge collapse. Most described it as a tragic engineering failure. One article caught her attention. Not because of the collapse, because of a single sentence buried near the end. A maintenance contractor employed under the alias Thomas Reed has not been located. Alias? She searched further. No birth certificate, no employment history, no driver's license. Thomas Reed had apparently existed only long enough to work 6 months on the bridge, then vanished. She photocopied the article. Something told her Thomas Reed mattered more than the 6 people who officially died. Just after midnight, Ruiz received a call from the crime lab. We've got something. No fingerprints? Nothing usable. What then? The wood. Ruiz waited. The box wasn't made recently. So? It was built approximately 30 years ago. She frowned. You mean someone carved that message decades before tonight? That's what the wood suggests. Ruiz slowly looked toward the evidence table. The box hadn't been prepared for Jack's ceremony. Someone had built it 30 years earlier and waited all this time to deliver it. Emily arrived at the museum moments later. She hadn't seen her father in over a decade. Jack looked older, smaller somehow. He noticed her immediately. Neither moved. Neither spoke. Everything they had rehearsed saying over 11 years disappeared. Finally, Emily broke the silence. Don't open the envelope. Jack's expression changed. Who told you about it? She froze. You shouldn't know it exists. Before she could answer, the museum lights flickered again. Not another blackout, just once. Every screen in the lobby suddenly turned on by itself. Security monitors, information displays, advertising panels, all showing the same live message. White letters, black background. He wrong people survived he bridgey. Then every screen went dark. No one inside the museum knew who had sent it, or how they had accessed every display simultaneously. But one thing became painfully clear. This wasn't about revenge. Someone was forcing the survivors to remember a truth they'd buried 30 years earlier. And whoever they were, they knew far more about Jack Mercer and his family than anyone should. The message remained on the museum screens for less than 8 seconds. It didn't need longer. Everyone who saw it understood the same thing. This wasn't random. Someone wanted Jack Mercer to remember something he had spent 30 years trying to forget. Detective Elena Ruiz immediately ordered every digital system shut down. The museum's network administrator looked pale. It didn't come through our servers. What do you mean? Someone didn't hack us. He turned his monitor toward her. The signal originated inside the building. Ruiz frowned. From where? He swallowed. Exhibit Hall 3. The room's been locked since the blackout. Officers swept the hall from end to end. Nothing. No intruder. No hidden laptop. No transmitter. Only a maintenance closet tucked behind an emergency exit. Inside sat an old folding chair, a half-empty bottle of water, and a portable battery pack still warm to the touch. Whoever had sent the message had been sitting there, watching everyone. They'd left less than 2 minutes before police arrived. Emily stood near one of the shattered display cases, trying not to look at her father. 11 years of silence couldn't disappear with a single conversation. Jack finally spoke. I didn't expect you to come. I didn't. You came anyway. She nodded once. For the watch, Jack's expression tightened. What do you know about it? Emily reached into her purse and pulled out the empty velvet pouch. It was in my apartment. Jack stared at it. Who gave it to you? I don't know. It just appeared. When? 3 days ago. She paused. I thought Mom had left it. Jack slowly shook his head. No, he looked more disturbed than relieved. Claire never even knew it existed. Across town, Maya Brooks replayed the museum footage frame by frame. The mysterious person with the glass eye moved with unusual confidence. No hesitation, no panic. Almost as if they had memorized the building months earlier. Then Maya noticed something else. The intruder never once looked at the exhibits, only the emergency exits. Like someone who had worked inside museums before, she began searching employment records, security companies, exhibit installers, restoration contractors. Nothing. Then a small article from 15 years earlier caught her attention. A private art recovery consultant, former military, specialized in stolen historical artifacts. One accompanying photograph showed him wearing dark sunglasses. His name was Owen Cross, one eye hidden. Ruiz's phone buzzed. The crime lab again. We found fibers inside the wooden box. What kind? Canvas. So? Old military-grade canvas. Ruiz scribbled the note. The technician continued. And one more thing. There was sand. Sand? Very fine. Not local. Ruiz frowned. Can you identify where it came from? Not yet, but whoever built that box didn't build it in Colorado. Jack asked Emily to walk with him outside. The cool night air settled between them. For several blocks, neither spoke. Finally, Emily broke the silence. I was angry. I know. No. She shook her head. You don't. I thought you chose your career over us. Jack stopped walking. I thought protecting you meant staying silent. Protecting me from what? He looked away. I couldn't tell you. Emily laughed bitterly. You always say that. I couldn't. You never trusted me, Jack answered quietly. I trusted you. I didn't trust the people watching us. Emily stopped. What people? Before he could answer, a black SUV rolled slowly past them. Its windows were completely tinted. Neither of them could see inside. It reached the corner, paused, then drove away. Jack watched it disappear. His face had gone pale. They found us. The next morning, Maya visited the Silver Canyon Bridge. It had been rebuilt after the collapse. Modern, stronger. Thousands of commuters crossed it every day without giving it a second thought. She climbed beneath the structure with permission from the State Transportation Office. Most original steel had been replaced. Not all. One rusted support beam remained preserved as a historical marker. A retired maintenance supervisor met her there. You writing another podcast? Trying to. You picked an old mystery. I heard there was a seventh worker. The man stopped smiling. Who told you that? No one. She watched his reaction carefully. I'm asking. He looked around before answering. There were 7 scheduled that night. The records say 6. I know what the records say. What happened to the 7th? I never saw him after the collapse. What was his name? The old supervisor hesitated. I honestly don't know. You worked with him. Not exactly. He only appeared that week. No paperwork, no payroll, no badge, just orders from management saying to leave him alone. Maya felt the pieces beginning to shift. So he wasn't a worker. The supervisor nodded slowly. He was watching something. Back at police headquarters, Ruiz pinned photographs across a whiteboard. Jack, Emily, the pocket watch, the wooden box, the bridge collapse, the museum. One photograph still bothered her. The bridge victims, 6 faces. She stared at the list. Then remembered the maintenance supervisor's words from Maya's interview, which Maya had just shared. 7 workers. Ruiz immediately requested the original emergency dispatch recordings from the night of the collapse. Most had been digitized. One survived only on cassette. The dispatcher counted rescued workers. Then bodies. Near the end of the recording, a firefighter's voice interrupted. Chief, we've got another one. Static. Then another voice. Negative. Don't write him down. Ruiz replayed the sentence. Again. Again. Someone had deliberately removed a survivor, or a victim, from the official record. That evening, Jack finally decided to open the envelope. Emily stood beside him, just as he had promised decades earlier. His fingers carefully broke the brittle seal. Inside wasn't a letter. It was a single Polaroid photograph. The colors had faded. But the image was unmistakable. 7 men stood together on the unfinished Silver Canyon Bridge. Jack recognized every face except one. The man at the end of the line had his arm around Jack's shoulder. He was smiling. Comfortable, as if they had known each other for years. Emily looked closer. "Dad, you know him?" Jack whispered one word. "No." He turned the photograph over. Written in black marker across the back were 6 chilling words. "You forgot him. He never forgot you." For the first time in 30 years, Jack Mercer realized the greatest gap in his memory wasn't what he remembered. It was the man he couldn't remember at all. And somewhere, hidden in the shadows, that forgotten 7th man was finally ready to be remembered. Jack couldn't take his eyes off the photograph. 7 men. 6 faces he could name without hesitation. The 7th, nothing. No memory, no name, no voice. It was as if someone had erased an entire person from his life. Emily noticed the panic building in her father's face. "You really don't remember him?" Jack slowly lowered the photo. "I remember that day." "You do?" "The bridge was almost finished. We took pictures because the project was ahead of schedule." He pointed to everyone else in the image. "I remember every conversation." He swallowed. "But him, it's like someone cut a page out of my life." Detective Elena Ruiz arrived minutes later after Jack called her. She examined the Polaroid under a magnifying lamp. This wasn't stored well. The edges had faded, but the center remained unusually sharp. She flipped it over again. "You forgot him. He never forgot you." Emily frowned. "That's personal." Ruiz nodded. "This wasn't written by someone trying to scare you. It was written by someone who feels abandoned." The next morning, Maya Brooks drove to Silver Canyon. Not to the bridge. To the tiny mining town that had existed long before the highway. Most of it had disappeared. A few brick buildings remained. A diner. A hardware store. An aging motel. She stepped into the diner, hoping someone still remembered the construction crews from 30 years earlier. Behind the counter stood an elderly waitress polishing coffee mugs. When Maya mentioned the bridge, the woman smiled. "Biggest thing that ever happened around here. Were the workers local?" "Some. Most weren't." Maya slid the Polaroid across the counter. "Recognize anyone?" The waitress immediately pointed to Jack. "Quiet fellow." Then another engineer. Then the foreman. Finally, her finger stopped over the 7th man. "Oh, you know him? I remember him. What's his name?" The waitress frowned. "I don't know. You just said you remembered him." "I do. He came in every morning. Same booth. Same breakfast." But she looked genuinely confused. "I can't remember his name." Maya leaned forward. "Did he ever talk about himself?" The waitress closed her eyes. "He always asked about everyone else. He knew birthdays, children's names, who was sick, who needed money. He remembered everything, but nobody remembered him." The sentence lingered in the air, as if it had been waiting 30 years to be spoken. Ruiz sent the Polaroid to a forensic imaging lab. Hours later, the technician called. "We enhanced the background. And you should come see this." The enlarged image revealed something hidden beyond the 7 workers. Parked beside the construction trailers sat a government vehicle. Its doors displayed a faded federal emblem. Ruiz stared at the screen. "That's not possible." The technician looked puzzled. "You recognize it?" "Yes. That seal belonged to the Office of Infrastructure Safety." "I've never heard of it, because it no longer exists." The office had been dissolved decades earlier after a congressional restructuring. Its investigators specialized in one thing: preventing corruption in federally funded construction projects. If one of their agents had been on site, the bridge collapse may never have been just an accident. Jack spent the afternoon inside his garage, not building, searching. Boxes filled with notebooks, old calendars, project binders, receipts. He was looking for anything connected to the bridge project. Hours passed. Nothing. Then he noticed one notebook had pages missing, not torn recently, carefully removed years ago, almost surgically. Emily watched him. "Did you do that?" "No." "You sure?" "I would have remembered." She looked around the garage. For someone who remembers everything, you've got a lot of missing pieces. Jack didn't argue, because she was right. Across town, someone watched Maya leave the diner, A silver pickup stayed 3 cars behind her, never speeding up, never falling back. At the next intersection, Maya noticed it in her mirror. She made an unexpected right turn. The truck followed. Another turn. Still there. Her pulse quickened. She pulled into a crowded gas station. The pickup drove past without stopping. She watched it disappear. Maybe she'd imagined it. Then her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You're asking the wrong people." No signature. No reply address. Just the message. That evening, Ruiz finally identified the federal investigator assigned to the Silver Canyon project. Agent Daniel Harlan. Status: missing. Not deceased. Not retired. Missing. His case file ended 6 days before the bridge collapse. No explanation. No closing report. Nothing. She immediately drove to Jack's house. When she mentioned the name, Jack froze. "Daniel," he whispered at once. Then again. Emily stared at him. "You remember him?" Jack closed his eyes. "I remember. A flash. A rainstorm. A flashlight cutting through darkness. Someone shouting. 'Run!' Then, nothing. The memory vanished as quickly as it appeared. I almost have it." Ruiz leaned forward. "What else?" Jack gripped the edge of the table. "My head. It feels like I promised someone I'd forget." The room fell silent. People don't usually forget traumatic memories by accident. Sometimes they bury them because remembering is even more terrifying. Late that night, Maya reviewed every frame of the Polaroid one last time. She enlarged the 7th man's wrist. A metal bracelet peeked from beneath his sleeve. Not jewelry. An identification band, stamped with tiny numbers. She enhanced the image again. Most of the engraving remained unreadable, except for the final 4 digits, 7,421. Her eyes widened. She had seen those numbers before, not on the bracelet, on the pocket watch. Inside its cracked cover, barely visible beneath the glass, were the same final 4 digits. The watch hadn't belonged to the man everyone thought. It had belonged to the forgotten 7th man. And if that was true, then someone had deliberately lied about whose death the watch was meant to represent. The mystery wasn't centered on the bridge anymore. It was centered on one man whose identity had somehow been erased from every official record, yet whose shadow still reached into the lives of everyone connected to Jack Mercer. The numbers wouldn't leave Maya's mind. 7,421. She had seen them twice. Once engraved inside the cracked pocket watch, now etched into the forgotten man's identification bracelet. Coincidence wasn't good enough anymore. By sunrise, she had a new theory. The bracelet wasn't an ID tag. It was a key. Detective Elena Ruiz spent the morning chasing the only lead that still felt tangible. The federal investigator, Daniel Harlan. His personnel file had vanished from every digital archive, but old federal records weren't always destroyed. Sometimes they were simply forgotten. A retired records supervisor in Washington agreed to speak with her over a secure video call. "I remember Harlan? You do? He wasn't popular. Why? He didn't care who he embarrassed. He investigated contractors, politicians, federal agencies, even his own department." Ruiz took notes. "What happened to him?" The man sighed. "The official answer?" Ruiz nodded. "He disappeared. And the unofficial one?" The supervisor hesitated. "Harlan believed someone was manipulating inspections on federally funded bridges. Did he prove it? He claimed he was close. Then he vanished." Back in Denver, Jack couldn't stop staring at the Polaroid. Emily watched him from across the kitchen. "You haven't slept." "No. You keep expecting something." Jack nodded. "I just don't know what." His phone rang. Unknown number. Emily reached for it. Jack answered first. No greeting. No breathing. Only a man's calm voice. "Locker 7. Jack froze. "What? You've been looking in the wrong place." The line disconnected. Emily looked at him. "Who was it?" "I don't know." But he knew about the photograph. Ruiz immediately traced the call. Disposable phone. Activated less than an hour earlier. Already destroyed. Professional. Very professional. But one phrase stood out. Locker 7. Not 214. 7. Someone was correcting Victor Kane's message. Which one was the trap? Maya spent the afternoon reviewing property records connected to the bridge project. Most companies no longer existed. One did. Frontier Steel Logistics. Its headquarters had closed 24 years earlier. Its final listed asset wasn't a warehouse. It was a bank lease. Safe deposit box 7421. Maya's pulse quickened. The number again. She called the bank immediately. The manager refused to discuss customer information until she mentioned that the lease might be connected to a federal criminal investigation. 5 minutes later, Detective Ruiz's badge solved the rest. The bank vault smelled faintly of old paper and polished steel. The manager unlocked box 7421 but stepped away before it was opened. Ruiz looked at Jack. "You should do it." His hands shook as he slid the small metal drawer onto the table. Inside lay only 3 items: a cassette tape, a brass key, and a sealed envelope addressed in neat handwriting, "To the first person who remembers my name." Silence filled the vault. Emily whispered, "Open it." Jack carefully unfolded the letter. The first line hit him like a freight train. "If you're reading this, then they failed to erase me completely. No signature. Only the letter." Jack kept reading. "Don't trust official reports. Don't trust photographs without negatives. And never assume the dead are the victims." Emily felt a chill run down her spine. "What does that mean?" Jack turned the page. Halfway down, his breathing stopped. There, under the closing paragraph, was a signature. Not Daniel Harlan. Not Victor Kane. Not anyone Jack recognized. Just 2 words. Samuel Vale. Jack stared blankly. "I've never heard that name." Ruiz took the cassette while Maya photographed every page. Back at police headquarters, they played the recording. A man's voice filled the room. Calm. Measured. "I don't know who finds this. If it's Daniel, I'm sorry. If it's Jack, you remembered." Jack leaned closer. The voice continued. "My name is Samuel Vale. I was never assigned to the bridge. I volunteered. I discovered someone was replacing certified steel with rejected shipments." Ruiz looked sharply toward Jack. Samuel continued. "The collapse wasn't the objective. It was the cover. Everyone in the room went still. The bridge was supposed to survive. The paperwork wasn't." The tape crackled. Samuel coughed several times before speaking again. "They realized I had copies, so they changed the plan. I've hidden everything where only someone who understands bridges would ever look." Jack whispered, "Where?" The tape answered almost immediately. The bridge was never the secret. It was the map. Then, silence. The cassette ended. That evening, Jack drove alone to Silver Canyon. He parked beneath the rebuilt bridge just before sunset. Emily arrived minutes later. "You left without saying anything. I had to see it." He slowly walked beneath the massive concrete spans. Thousands of commuters passed overhead, unaware of the history beneath their tires. Jack stopped beside one of the original stone support columns preserved from the first bridge. He ran his fingers across the weathered surface, then smiled faintly. "I built this section." Emily frowned. "So?" Jack stepped backward. "No, I hid something in it." She looked at him in disbelief. "You hid something 30 years ago? I didn't remember until now." He examined the stone carefully. Near the base sat an oddly shaped block that didn't match the others. Jack reached into his pocket. The brass key from the safe deposit box fit perfectly into a tiny concealed lock hidden inside the mortar. A soft click echoed. The stone shifted outward. Behind it rested a narrow metal cylinder. Still sealed. Still dry. Jack lifted it out with trembling hands. Inside were dozens of rolled engineering drawings, original bridge blueprints. But they weren't construction plans. They were covered in handwritten notes. Arrows, dates, names, and one sentence circled in red. "The money never scrossed the bridgey." Before anyone could study the drawings further, a voice echoed from the darkness beneath the span. "Mr. Mercer." Jack slowly turned. A tall man stepped into the fading light. Gray hair, weathered face, one unmistakable glass eye. The same man captured on the museum security camera. He looked at Jack with an expression that wasn't hatred. It was disappointment. "I've waited 30 years for you to remember." Jack tightened his grip on the metal cylinder. "Who are you?" The stranger smiled sadly. "You still don't recognize me." He took one slow step forward. "My name is Samuel Vale." The river rushed beneath the bridge, drowning out everything except the stranger's footsteps. Jack held the metal cylinder tighter. Emily instinctively moved closer to her father. Detective Elena Ruiz, who had followed at a distance after tracking Jack's phone, quietly rested her hand near her holster but didn't draw her weapon. The man with the glass eye stopped about 20 feet away. "I've spent 3 decades wondering what you'd say when we finally met again." Jack's voice was steady. "You say your name is Samuel Vale." "It is." "I heard Samuel Vale's voice on that tape." "You did. And now you're standing in front of me." Samuel nodded. "Yes." Jack searched the man's face. "I've never seen you before." A faint smile crossed Samuel's face. "That's exactly what they wanted." Samuel didn't move any closer. Instead, he pointed toward the cylinder in Jack's hands. "Open it," Emily interrupted. "Not until you tell us what's going on." Samuel looked at her. "You must be Emily." She stiffened. "You know who I am? I've known who you were since the day you were born." Jack stepped forward. "How?" Samuel ignored the question. Instead, he looked at the bridge towering overhead. "Do you know why people remember disasters?" No one answered. They remember the moment everything falls apart. He looked back at Jack. "They almost never remember the years people spent trying to stop it." Ruiz finally spoke. "Were you an investigator?" Samuel shook his head. "No. Engineer? No." "Then who were you?" He answered simply. "I was an accountant." Everyone stared at him. He almost laughed. "I know. Not very dramatic. But somebody had to follow the money." 30 years earlier, Samuel explained, he worked for a federal audit team reviewing infrastructure contracts across several western states. On paper, everything looked perfect. Every inspection passed. Every shipment matched. Every payment balanced, until one invoice didn't. A shipment of certified structural steel had supposedly arrived in Colorado. The paperwork said it had. The railroad records said it hadn't. Someone had billed the government for steel that never existed. At first, Samuel believed it was ordinary fraud, a few dishonest contractors, nothing more. Then he followed the payments. The money didn't disappear. It kept moving, from shell companies, to political action committees, to consulting firms, then back into legitimate construction contracts. The fraud wasn't funding luxury homes. It was funding more projects, each one hiding the last. "It became a machine," Samuel said quietly. "And once I understood it, they decided I couldn't exist anymore." Jack looked down at the blueprints. "I remember the inspections," Samuel nodded. "You remember because you argued with inspectors every week." "I thought they were just being difficult. They were buying time." "For what?" "So replacement shipments could arrive before anyone noticed the originals were missing." Emily frowned. "So the bridge wasn't supposed to fail." "No." Samuel's expression hardened. "The collapse happened because someone panicked." Ruiz leaned forward. "What changed?" Samuel answered without hesitation. "Daniel Harlan, the federal investigator. He got too close. He found witnesses. He found warehouse records. He was preparing arrests, so they created a catastrophe. A disaster is louder than an investigation." Silence settled over the riverbank. Jack slowly opened the engineering drawings. They weren't ordinary blueprints. Each beam carried handwritten notes, numbers connected to bank transfers, material shipments, delivery routes. Tiny symbols linked certain support columns to specific invoices. Maya, who had arrived moments earlier after following Ruiz's location, stared at the pages. "This isn't engineering," Samuel nodded. "It's a ledger." Jack looked confused. "I don't understand. You built the safest place in the entire project. The bridge. So I hid the evidence inside something nobody would ever demolish unless the bridge itself came down." Emily turned toward Samuel. "If you knew where the evidence was, why didn't you come back yourself?" For the first time, Samuel looked genuinely tired. "I tried." He slowly removed his jacket. A long scar stretched across his shoulder, then another across his ribs. 3 days after the collapse, someone tried to make sure I disappeared too. I survived, but not as Samuel Vale. He reached into his wallet. Inside were driver's licenses from different decades, different names, different states. I stopped counting after the 6th identity. Jack's guilt became visible. "I forgot you." Samuel shook his head. "No, you survived. There's a difference." Jack closed his eyes. "I should have remembered. You couldn't." Samuel's voice softened. Harlan knew they'd come after everyone connected to the case, so he made a choice. What choice? He divided the evidence, and he made each of us remember only one piece. Emily looked confused. That's impossible. Samuel looked at her. Trauma doesn't erase memories. It buries them. Harlan believed if nobody knew the whole truth, nobody could be forced to reveal it. Ruiz suddenly understood. The messages, the watch, the museum, the photograph. Samuel nodded. I wasn't trying to frighten your father. I was trying to wake him up. Jack whispered. So all of this, was to help me remember. Yes, a low rumble echoed above them. Not thunder. Engines. 2 black SUVs rolled onto the maintenance road leading beneath the bridge. Samuel's expression changed instantly. They found us. Ruiz drew her weapon. Who? Samuel didn't answer. Instead, he looked directly at Jack. There was always one final piece. What piece? Samuel pointed toward the cylinder. Turn over the last blueprint. Jack did. Taped beneath it was a small memory card. No label. No markings. Samuel smiled faintly. Harlan never trusted paper. Emily picked up the card. What's on it? Samuel looked toward the approaching headlights, the only meeting they never realized he recorded. The SUVs stopped. 4 well-dressed men stepped out. No uniforms, no visible weapons, just tailored suits and calm expressions. One older man walked to the front. His silver hair reflected in the headlights. He looked at Samuel first, then Jack, finally Emily. I was hoping we'd settle this quietly. Ruiz raised her badge. Identify yourself. The man smiled politely. My name isn't important. Samuel's face hardened. It never was. The stranger folded his hands. Mr. Mercer, you've spent 30 years believing you were searching for the truth. He glanced at the memory card in Emily's hand. But the truth has never been the dangerous part. Emily's grip tightened. What is? The man smiled without warmth. Whoever watches that recording inherits every enemy who spent 3 decades trying to bury it. The river rushed beneath the bridge as no one moved. For 30 years, the secret had been hidden in steel and stone. Now it fit in the palm of Emily's hand, and every person standing beneath the bridge understood the same thing. Once that recording was played, none of their lives would ever return to what they had been. The memory card weighed almost nothing. Yet every person beneath the bridge looked at it as if it were made of lead. The older man in the tailored suit smiled with practiced calm. You still have a choice. No one answered. Hand it over. We all go home. Emily glanced at her father. Jack didn't even look at the man. His eyes stayed on the tiny card in her hand. For the first time in years, he wasn't trying to protect her by making the decision himself. He simply asked, What do you want to do? Emily realized something profound. Her father had spent his entire life carrying everyone else's burdens. This time, he was trusting her. Detective Elena Ruiz stepped between them. You're interfering with an active investigation. The suited man shrugged. I don't work for the government. I never said you did. A faint smile crossed his face. Exactly. His 3 companions spread out slowly, not threatening, just enough to close the distance. Samuel leaned toward Jack. They don't need violence. They only need uncertainty. What do you mean? If they convince us, nobody will believe the evidence. They win without touching us. Maya quietly pulled out her phone. Not to call for backup. To begin a live stream. There was no title. No announcement. Only a live image of the bridge and the people beneath it. A handful of viewers joined. Then dozens. Then hundreds. The suited man noticed. His smile faded. You should turn that off. Maya shook her head. No. You don't know what's on that card. I don't. But I know what happens when powerful people insist something should stay unseen. Emily looked at the memory card, then at the river, then back at Samuel. You said Harlan recorded one meeting. Samuel nodded. The last one, the meeting where everyone betrayed each other. Ruiz removed a portable evidence reader from her vehicle. If we're doing this, we do it together. She inserted the card. A single video file appeared. No title, no date, just a timestamp from 30 years earlier. She pressed play. The picture was grainy, recorded by a hidden camera tucked inside a toolbox. A conference room came into view. 7 people sat around a table. Jack appeared only briefly, delivering revised engineering drawings before leaving. He wasn't part of the meeting. The remaining 6 stayed. Among them, Daniel Harlan, Samuel Vale, Victor Kane, and 3 executives from construction firms that no longer existed. For several minutes, they argued over inspection reports. Then everything changed. One executive slid a folder across the table. "We can still fix this." Harlan didn't touch it. "Fix it?" The executive leaned back. "No investigations, no headlines, no careers destroyed." Samuel's younger voice answered quietly. "And what happens to the bridges?" Silence. Then the oldest executive said something no one beneath the modern bridge expected. "We rebuild them," Harlan frowned. "What? They're already compromised." "We know that. So we replace every one." Samuel stared at him. "With what money?" The executive smiled. "The money nobody can trace." Ruiz paused the video. "What are they saying?" Samuel answered. "The fraud funded the repairs." Emily looked stunned. "They stole government money to secretly repair unsafe bridges?" Samuel nodded. "They created the danger and then used the crime to prevent something even worse," Jack whispered. "People died." "Yes." Samuel's voice broke for the first time. "They gambled with lives. They convinced themselves the outcome justified the crime." The video continued. Harlan stood. "I'm taking this to the Justice Department." Victor Kane rose too. "No, you'll collapse half the country's infrastructure program. Thousands of projects will stop overnight." "They should. They won't." Victor's face carried genuine anguish. "They'll abandon every bridge still waiting for repairs." Harlan didn't hesitate. "Then we tell the truth." The recording ended abruptly. Not with violence, not with threats. Only 6 people trapped between impossible choices. Silence settled beneath the bridge. The mystery had never been simple corruption, nor simple heroism. Every major figure had crossed a moral line for a different reason. Some stole. Some covered it up. Some stayed silent. Some tried to expose it. No one walked away clean. The suited man finally spoke. "Now you understand." Emily looked at him. "No, I understand something different." He waited. "You've spent 30 years protecting reputations. My father spent 30 years carrying guilt." She held up the memory card. "I'm done inheriting either." She handed it. Not to Ruiz. Not to Samuel. To Maya. The journalist looked surprised. "Why me?" "Because this story doesn't belong to one family. It belongs to everyone who ever trusted someone to build something that would carry them safely home." Maya nodded. Without hesitation, she turned her live stream camera toward the evidence reader. Millions of viewers wouldn't see rumors. They would see the original recording. Exactly as it was. No edits, no narration, no one controlling the story. Only the truth. Weeks later, Congress announced an independent historical commission. Not to prosecute 30-year-old crimes that could no longer be fairly tried, but to identify every bridge, contract, and decision touched by the hidden network. Engineers across the country volunteered to review aging infrastructure. Several unsafe structures were repaired before they could fail. Not because of scandal, because people finally had the courage to ask difficult questions. Victor Kane resigned quietly. He never defended himself publicly. Before leaving his office for the last time, he mailed Jack a single handwritten note. It read, "I kept choosing the project over the people. You never did. I should have listened. There was no signature. There didn't need to be. Samuel Vale disappeared again, not out of fear, out of choice. He left no forwarding address, only one message for Jack. You remembered enough. The rest belongs to tomorrow." Months later, Emily visited her father. Not for an investigation, not for an apology, just for dinner. They cooked in awkward silence, burned the cornbread, laughed harder than either expected. At the end of the evening, Jack opened a small wooden box. Inside were blueprints, blank ones. He slid them across the table. Emily smiled. "I don't know anything about bridges." Jack smiled back. "Neither do most people." He tapped the empty page. "But everyone knows what it feels like when one is missing. Together, They began sketching plans for a community engineering center where retired builders would mentor young designers, inspectors, and tradespeople. Not just how to construct stronger bridges, but how to protect the public trust that made those bridges worth building. The greatest structure Jack Mercer ever helped create wasn't made of steel or concrete. It was built from something far harder to restore: trust. And unlike every bridge he'd engineered during his career, this one didn't connect two pieces of land. It connected a father and daughter who finally chose truth over silence, understanding over blame, and the difficult work of rebuilding what mattered most.